All right, in part one, we discussed the roller coaster revenue and the solution to that being the three-part business model. In this video, we'll get into the fundamentals of designing a retreat model and a retreat that is sustaining. These are the decisions that you'll want to make before you ever book a venue or promote your retreat or try to sell anything. And I promise you that if you do this part well, everything flows from that. But skip it and everything downstream is even harder. Here's a quick overview of what I'll be covering in this video. Number one is why so many retreat leaders struggle with their retreat sales and marketing. Two, the 7 design decisions up front that help you attract and promote to the right people who are ready to say yes. Number 3 is the design decision that most people make last that I recommend you make first. And finally, what makes a retreat that people rave about versus one they just forget about? Let's go. Most retreat problems, in my humble opinion, are design problems. When you don't do design right, you struggle with a retreat that doesn't fill, that doesn't sell, it doesn't convert, or doesn't transform. The good news is that all of these design problems are solvable upfront. This phase is important, and the best part about it is it only really costs you time and focus, and it really pays off. I call this discover and design. Now, by the way, I invite you, before we continue and get really deep into this, to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'd love to hear what you're thinking below in the comments as you're watching this video. Now, by the way, quick note about who I am and why I'm a credible source on this. I already told much of my story in the first video, but I will also say that in 12 years, I've helped a lot of people build and grow their retreat businesses. And that this content is literally my entire 3-day retreat. People come into that retreat and they roll up their sleeves and they get to work designing their retreat model, their retreats themselves, the prices, the packages, all of it. And we'll talk more about that at the end of this video. So as you can see behind me, there are 7 keys of this discover and design phase. The first P is purpose. And the reason I bring purpose up first is because everything else on here is about the audience and what they need, but purpose really starts with you. This is how you can make sure that this retreat business that you're building is aligned with who you really are and why you're here. Sometimes it can seem like a great idea to do a retreat. It seems like a fun thing. Oh, I'll just bring a few people together. We'll rent this great house, or we'll go to this resort and we'll do yoga and meditate. And that's awesome. But it's usually not that easy or that simple unless you have a pretty big front end audience engine to drive people through the door. So that's why purpose comes in, because it's really important for you as a leader, as the founder of this experience, to be really tapped in and make sure that this is what you really want to do and that you have a strong connection to the why behind your doing it. Now, I'm a big fan of having really 2 whys. I break up the purpose into the little why and the big why. So let's start with the little why. The little why is why you want to do this more strategically. Why does this make sense for your life, for your business? What is it that you're trying to do? What is the purpose of this model in your life? Is it to make more money? Is it to make a bigger impact? Is it to showcase your skills? There's no real wrong answer here. What matters is that this be something that's real and that you can really connect to. So that's the little why. And then the second why is the big why. Why does this matter in the larger sense? Why does this matter to your audience, to the community, to the world, right? What's the context for this program that you're building, for this business that you're building on a bigger scale, something that lives beyond you, outside of you, that's bigger than you? So I would invite you to really do some soul searching here, maybe do a meditation, tap in, slow down, take some deep breaths, and write down the purpose. The second point here is the people. This is all about who are you serving. It's so important to start with the who that you're serving so you really can get into their mind, into their head, into their hearts, and build something that meets their needs, serves their pain points, that transforms them in the way that they want and need and will pay for. Very important point there. Will pay for. So the people getting into who is the ideal person. Now, I know how this goes. There are probably a lot of people that you could help and a lot of people you feel drawn to helping, and that is great. I'm not saying you have to limit your retreats to one specific audience or niche, but I will say that marketing gets so much easier when you narrow your focus to a specific niche. So what that might look like, I have a client or friend, I've talked about her on this channel a lot. Her name's Leanne. In fact, I interviewed her on this channel. And her audience are women over 50, in midlife, accomplished women, successful professional entrepreneurs primarily, who are at this stage of their life where they're just feeling like, is this all there is? And they're recognizing that the runway in front of them is shorter than the one behind them. And so this is like a do or die kind of moment. And they might have a lot of regret about how they've lived their life and they're ready to take a step forward. It's a very clear avatar. She does really well when she's in audiences of women entrepreneurs, women professionals, people trying to make their lives, like change their lives, they're in transition, that sort of thing. Identifying who your audience is and then really understanding them on a deep level is very important. And so I would recommend, like, if it stresses you out to narrow your focus that much, just think of it as a marketing strategy. It's just how you're going to market the program and the business. The third piece are the pain points. Once you know who your audience is, you can kind of guess pretty well what are they struggling with. If your ideal audience are HR directors in corporate America trying to help their employees and their teams not be so burnt out and exhausted, now you understand what they're facing, right? There are a lot of pain points that you can pinpoint more easily when you're clear about who you're focused on. One thing I like to do is divide the pain points into 3. I briefly touched on this in the last video. It's the problem they know and admit. You get the problem that they know and don't. And finally, you've got the problem that they don't even know they have. And I think that this is the most powerful part of building this model, because once you understand the problem they don't know, which I also call the blind spot, then you can build a lot of your retreat around exposing and clearing that blind spot that they didn't even know they had. So for example, if you're a wellness, I had a client who was a wellness practitioner and doing wellness retreats. And her whole focus when she came to me was gut health and specifically how to eat and how to take care of your gut for greater mental clarity and all of this stuff. But she was not getting a lot of traction. And that's because a lot of people didn't even realize that gut health was related to a mental health. And so she had to go on an education campaign on the front end to lead with the problems people knew they had: weight gain, fatigue, lack of sleep, etc. Leading with those problems that they knew they had, and then in the front end, teaching them about the gut health and the microbiome. And then that became how she was able to get more people to know about the problem. The fourth element is the promise. So once you're clear about all these things, you can kind of guess what people want, what they need, what they're looking for, and you can develop a 3-day retreat that delivers on this promise. With the example that I gave earlier with gut health, right? You can't transform a person's gut health for life in 3 days, but you can certainly make some big breakthroughs in that arena in 3 days. So in my world, with my retreat, one of the things that I do is that I lead with, hey, you want to have a business that's sustainable, a business that feels energy rich, a business that's joyful, that has recurring revenue. The blind spot is you need a big back end. So that's what my entire 3-day business breakthrough is about. It's about identifying, getting clarity, focus, and a plan of action for the big back end, right? So that's the promise of the 3 days. In 3 days, you're going to figure this out. You're going to walk away and actually have a retreat model. You're going to know what the front end is, all the marketing strategies. You'll know what the breakthrough is for your people, and you'll have designed your big back end. You'll even do revenue projections, and so everything related to that. Now, I know so much more than what we can do in those 3 days, But the promise is one clear and compelling promise and outcome that they get. And then the premise, what the premise is about is that what do they need to do first before they can do anything else? In my business model, which I just described, they can't do all the marketing strategies, all the sales strategies, all of that until they're clear about what it is they're marketing and selling. So that's why the promise of the business breakthrough comes first. That's the premise. It's what comes first. And then what comes after it, the mastery, right? So the premise of your retreat has to be something that gets built on in the back end. I hope this is making sense. I messed this up a lot at the beginning. In the beginning, I used to try to throw as much value into the package as I could. I'd say, well, and I'm going to give you these 12 interviews and these 16 modules, and I'm going to give you this and this to try to increase the perceived value of the bundle. And what I didn't realize, and what I really want to emphasize to you because it made such a difference, is that people will pay more and are more excited about a simple offer that achieves the big outcome that they need. In other words, avoid the kitchen sink strategy where you're just adding more stuff in that costs probably time and energy for you, but also makes the program feel more overwhelming for clients. I would say cut out everything that's not essential. Bring in the very, very essentials only. So I'll give you an example. My business breakthrough has the 3-day retreat, but one of the things that we do in the bundle is that we include personality testing so that very early on, they can have more clarity about who they are. I have more clarity about them, and my team has more clarity too. So that's very valuable, and it only takes 30 or 40 minutes for them to do these profile tests versus throwing in 12 podcast episodes that are just going to take 12 hours to listen to, more or less. Start thinking about what simple things that help get to the outcome faster, not how do I add more stuff into my retreat package. And then pricing, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make with pricing is that they're undercharging. Pricing is an interesting dance. Like, it's something that, first of all, you don't want to charge too much, obviously, because then probably nobody will buy it. And you don't want to charge too little, right? You don't want to leave money on the table. But there's no way to know exactly what the right price is. So my advice on pricing is a little different. So the way that I recommend coming up with price is a little different, maybe a little backwards seeming, which is I recommend coming up with that number that feels exciting, that feels juicy first, and also that you're committed to. It's a number that's not so outrageous that you're like, I don't know how I could ever ask for that. That's too much. Something that's a little bit of a stretch that feels really juicy and good, and then backwards, like back into that number by offering the transformation that number justifies, so that you can say, all right, I'm going to charge $2,000. What would justify? Not the elements of it, but what transformational outcome would justify that $2,000 price point? Or if you want to make it $10,000 and you feel really solid about that number, it's like, all right, what would they need to walk away with for $10,000? And I've had offers at every single kind of level, from $997 all the way up to $40,000. There is a client for every transformation, for every outcome. And that's another reason to get really clear up here on the people. Pick people for whom the problem is very valuable to solve it, so that they're more inclined to invest more in it. And then the last piece is the problem solution path. The problem solution path is about leading people through the journey from the aha to the breakthrough to the big back end. There's a problem that they know they have and admit. You address that problem in the front end. You offer a solution, and that solution leads them to the breakthrough program. In the breakthrough program, they fix the solution to the first problem, and a new problem emerges. And so that new problem becomes the offer for the big back end. Example, my business, the front end, hey, you want to do successful, profitable retreats? You need a big back end business model. Hey, you want to come in and work on your big back end business model in my business breakthrough program? Inside the business breakthrough program, we keep that promise, you create that offer, and then the big back end offer is, hey, do you want to be held accountable to this plan? Do you want us to help you with the marketing and the selling of this plan? So that's the problem solution path. So you'll want to think about how that applies to your transformation that you offer. Finally, as promised, if you want a retreat that people rave about versus forget about, then make sure that you keep your promise and that you do everything needed for your people to walk away with that outcome. Personally, I offer a guarantee. If people come into my retreat, they do the work, they show up, and they don't get that outcome, I give them their money back. And that means people feel like I'm in it with them. I'm also taking a risk. So for what it's worth, I think it's really important for you to put some skin in the game too and be right in there with your own clients. And that makes people feel like you're really, really taking care of them and that you really care. So if you're looking for some support in building and growing your retreat business, maybe I can help. Let's connect. Go to superstaractivator.com/go and explore if and how we might be able to work together. And make sure to watch part 3 next, which is how to promote and enroll people into your retreat. See you soon.